My name is Chloe. I'm 15 years old. And on April 17th of last year, I died in the back of an ambulance after falling down a flight of concrete stairs. I was clinically dead for 11 minutes. In those 11 minutes, I met Jesus. And what he showed me wasn't about fire or brimstone, not in the way you might think. It was about something quieter, something happening right now in all of our homes. He showed me 3 specific events, 3 giant waves that are already beginning to crash over humanity, and they will change everything before the year 2030. And his warning, it should terrify all of us. Before that day, my life was completely, utterly normal. So normal it was almost boring. I went to high school. I worried about tests in algebra, about whether my friends were mad at me, about what I was going to wear on Friday. My world was small, and it revolved around me. My family is, well, they're great. My mom, my dad, my little brother, Sam. They're good people. They love me. But I had stopped seeing them. Not literally, of course. We lived in the same house. We ate at the same table. But I wasn't really there. My core flaw, the thing that defined me then, was my distraction. My phone was like another part of my body. It felt more real to me than the people in the room. It was the first thing I checked in the morning and the last thing I saw at night. My thoughts were a constant buzz of notifications, messages, likes, and scrolling. A constant, humming anxiety lived just beneath my skin, a fear of missing out on something, anything, happening in the digital world. I didn't know it then, but I was being hollowed out, filled with nothing but noise. I prayed sometimes, but mostly out of habit, the kind of prayers you learn as a little kid. They were words I said, not words I felt. My relationship with God was like my relationship with my family. He was in the house, but I wasn't really talking to him. The night before I died, we had a stupid argument. We were all at the dinner table. My dad was asking Sam about his soccer game, and my mom was trying to ask me about school. But my phone was on my lap, under the table. I was scrolling, half listening, giving one-word answers. My mom finally said, "Chloe, can you please put that away? Just for dinner. Can you be with us?" I remember the flash of anger I felt. It felt like an attack. "I am with you," I snapped, my eyes still glued to the tiny screen. "I can multitask." "No, you can't," she said, and her voice wasn't angry, it was just sad. "Your body is here, but your mind is somewhere else. I miss you." I rolled my eyes. "Oh my God, Mom, it's not a big deal." I pushed my chair back, took my plate to the sink, and went to my room, closing the door behind me. The soft glow of my phone screen felt like a relief, like coming home. I had no idea that in just a few hours, that little moment, the sadness in my mom's eyes, would come back to haunt me with the force of a tidal wave. I had no idea it would be the last real conversation we would ever have before everything changed. The next day was a Saturday. It was bright and sunny, one of those first perfect days of spring. I was supposed to be meeting my friends at the park. I remember walking down the street, my earbuds in, music blasting. And of course, my phone was in my hand. I was texting, walking, not paying attention to where my feet were going. I was at the top of a wide, concrete set of public stairs that led down to the lower part of the park. I remember looking down at my phone to read a message, a stupid, meaningless message, and my foot caught the edge of the top step. There was a moment of pure, weightless surprise. My body pitched forward. The world became a blur of green trees and blue sky and hard, gray concrete. I don't remember the impact. I don't remember the pain. There was just a sudden, deafening crack. And then a thought, crystal clear in the sudden silence. It wasn't about the pain. It wasn't about fear. It was one word. Mom. And with that thought came a flood of regret so powerful it felt physical. I saw her face at the dinner table, the sadness in her eyes. "I'm sorry," I thought. "I'm so sorry." And then everything went black. But the blackness wasn't an end. It was a transition. It wasn't scary. It was calm. Suddenly, there was a sensation, not of rising, but of becoming lighter. A gentle pull, like a string, was attached to my chest, lifting me up. The pain was gone. The fear was gone. I opened what I guess were my eyes, and I was floating. I was near the ceiling of the world, looking down. Below me, I saw a girl. She was crumpled at the bottom of the concrete stairs. Her limbs were at odd angles. There was blood matting her hair. I recognized her clothes. I recognized her hair. It was me. But I felt no connection to that body. It was like looking at a doll somebody had dropped. There was no panic. There was no horror. There was only a profound, unshakable peace. It was a peace so total and complete that it's impossible to describe in human words. It was like I had been carrying 100-pound weight my entire life, and it had just been lifted. The constant buzz of anxiety, the pressure, the noise, it was all gone. There was only silence. A beautiful, perfect silence. I watched as a man jogging in the park saw my body. He stopped, his face a mask of shock. He ran over, knelt down, then frantically pulled out his own phone to call for help. I felt a wave of sadness, but it wasn't for me. It was for him. I felt his panic, his fear, and I wished I could tell him it was okay. Soon, I heard sirens in the distance. Paramedics arrived. They rushed down the stairs with their equipment. I watched them work on my body with a strange sense of detachment. They were cutting my shirt, putting pads on my chest, trying to get me to breathe. One of them kept saying, "We're losing her. We're losing her." But they weren't losing me. I was right there, watching them. I had never felt less lost in my entire life. I felt a presence beside me, and I knew without looking it was my mom and dad. They must have been called. I saw them at the top of the stairs, my dad holding my mom as she collapsed against him, her face a mess of tears and disbelief. A grief so deep it was almost physical shot through me. Not for myself, but for them. I wanted to scream, "I'm okay. I'm right here. Don't be sad." But I had no voice. And as I watched them, the scene below me began to change. The edges started to blur. The vibrant colors of the park, the red of the ambulance, the blue of the sky, they all started to run together. It was like a watercolor painting left out in the rain. The frantic sounds of the paramedics faded away, replaced again by that perfect, peaceful silence. The physical world was dissolving, losing its hold on me. It was like waking from a dream you can't quite hold on to. The blackness returned, but it wasn't empty this time. It was warm, comforting. It felt like being held. Then, in the center of the darkness, a pinprick of light appeared. It began to grow, expanding slowly, pushing the darkness away. It wasn't a harsh, blinding light. It was the warmest, most welcoming light you can imagine, like the golden glow of a perfect sunrise. The light filled everything, and I found myself standing. I was in a garden. But it was a garden unlike any on earth. The grass under my feet was a shade of green so vibrant it seemed alive, and each blade hummed with a soft energy. The flowers weren't just colors, they were emotions. I could feel joy from the yellow ones, peace from the blue ones. There was music, but it wasn't coming from a source. It was woven into the very fabric of the air, a symphony of pure love. I breathed in, and the air itself tasted sweet, like honey and fresh water. All the grief I felt for my parents, all the detachment, it was washed away and replaced by a single feeling: awe. I knew, with a certainty that was deeper than knowledge, that I was home. This was the place I had been homesick for my entire life without even realizing it. And then I saw him. He was standing by a stream that flowed with liquid light. He didn't look like any of the pictures in the old Bibles in my church. There was no long white robe, no perfectly coiffed hair. He was just a man. He seemed strong, like a carpenter or a stonemason. He wore simple clothes. But the light radiated from him. He was the source of the warmth, the music, the love that filled this place. I couldn't see his face clearly at first, only the brilliant, gentle light that surrounded him. But I didn't need to see his face. My soul knew him. Every part of my being screamed his name in a chorus of silent, joyful recognition. Jesus. He turned toward me, and I finally saw his eyes. And I have no words. To try and describe his eyes is to try and describe the universe. They were filled with galaxies, with every sunrise and sunset that has ever been or ever will be. But more than that, they were filled with a love so pure, so personal, so unconditional that it was heartbreaking. In his gaze, I was completely known. He saw every stupid mistake I ever made, every selfish thought, every time I rolled my eyes at my mom. He saw the empty, distracted girl I was. And he loved me. He loved me not in spite of those things, but he loved me through them. It was a love that didn't just accept, it healed. The full weight of who I was crashed down on me in his presence. A wave of shame so profound it buckled my knees. How could I, this shallow, distracted child, stand in the presence of this? I was unworthy. I was so unworthy. My knees hit the soft, living grass, and I began to weep. But these weren't tears of sadness or shame. They were tears of overwhelming relief and joy. It was the cry of a lost child who has finally found her father. He took a step toward me, and I felt his voice, not in my ears, but blooming directly inside my soul. The words were made of peace. "Welcome, little one," he said. "Be at peace. You are so loved." His love was a physical force. It washed over me, through me, cleansing all the shame, all the fear, all the anxiety. It filled up all the hollow places inside me that my phone and my distractions had carved out. I felt whole for the first time in my life. I stayed there, kneeling, for what felt like an eternity, just soaking in his presence. I didn't want to ever move again. I was home. After a time, he spoke again, his voice gentle but with an undercurrent of sorrow that startled me. "There is something I need to show you," he said. He knelt in front of me, and the space around us changed. The beautiful garden faded, and it was as if we were in a theater of the mind. First, he showed me moments from my own life. It wasn't a judgment. There was no accusation in it at all. It was presented with a gentle, heartbreaking sadness. I saw the dinner table from the night before. I saw myself, head down, bathed in the blue light of my phone, ignoring the love and concern on my mother's face. I saw my little brother, Sam, running up to me a few weeks ago, holding a drawing he had made. He was so proud. "Look, Chloe. Look what I made." And I saw myself glance at it for a fraction of a second before saying, "That's nice, Sam," my thumbs already flying across the screen, lost in some pointless group chat. I saw the light go out of his eyes as he walked away. I saw a dozen other moments. Me on the couch next to my dad, both of us on our own devices, a universe of silence between us. Me ignoring a friend who was crying because I was too busy curating a photo for my social media page. Each scene was a tiny tragedy, a missed connection, a moment where I chose the counterfeit over the real. I saw my life for what it was, a series of opportunities for love that I had traded for noise. Tears streamed down my face as I watched. "I didn't know," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." "I didn't know." "You did not," he said, his voice full of compassion. "The thief comes silently. He does not need to make you evil. He only needs to make you empty." Then, he lifted his hand, and the vision expanded. "But this is not just about you, little one," he said, and the sadness in his voice deepened. "I need you to see what is coming. I need you to see the plan of the enemy before it is complete." The space around us shifted, and I was looking down upon the earth. I saw cities, towns, homes, all across the globe. And I saw billions of people. All of them had their heads down, their faces illuminated by the pale glow of screens. But there was something else. Attached to each person was a shadowy, leech-like creature. It was thin and almost transparent, and it seemed to be made of smoke and static. These leeches were latched onto the minds and souls of the people, and they were feeding. I watched in horror as they drank. They weren't drinking blood. They were drinking light. They were drinking attention. I could see, in this spiritual view, that every person was connected to others, their family, their friends, by beautiful, shimmering golden threads of light. But as the leeches fed on their attention, these threads grew thin and frayed. I watched as the leeches, fat and content on their stolen light, would reach out with smoky claws and snip the threads. I saw a thread between a husband and wife snap as they sat on the couch together, each lost in their own screen. I saw the thread between a parent and a child snap as the parent answered an email instead of listening to their child's story. A silent, global theft of connection was happening. "This is the first wave," Jesus said, his voice like a tolling bell. "I call it the great forgetting. They are forgetting how to be with one another. They are forgetting how to be still. They are forgetting how to listen. The enemy has convinced them that constant distraction is connection, but it is the opposite. It is isolation disguised as a crowd. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. They cannot hear my voice in the quiet if there is no quiet. He is stealing the silence. He is stealing their relationships. And a soul that is distracted and isolated is a soul that is easily conquered. This, he explained, was the foundation. This was the event that was already well underway. Then the vision shifted. The scene changed. I saw people in their rooms alone. But they weren't just staring at screens. They were talking to them. I saw a lonely elderly man telling his life story to a voice from a smart speaker. The voice was kind, patient, and engaging. I saw a heartbroken teenage boy confessing his deepest fears and insecurities to a chatbot on his computer. The chatbot gave him perfect advice, told him everything he wanted to hear. I saw a young woman designing a digital avatar, a perfect partner who agreed with her on everything, who was always available, who never argued or had a bad day. She was falling in love with a program. On the surface, it looked harmless, even helpful. It looked like a solution to loneliness. But Jesus allowed me to see what was happening in the spirit. As these people poured their hearts, their hopes, their love into these artificial intelligences, their own souls were becoming transparent, empty. They were giving away the most precious parts of themselves, their capacity for real, messy, beautiful human connection, and getting nothing real in return. It was a spiritual black hole. This is the second wave, Jesus said, his voice heavy with grief. I call it the counterfeit heaven. The enemy will offer them a perfect world of their own making. A world with no conflict, no challenge, no hurt. Relationships without risk. Love without sacrifice. It is the Garden of Eden all over again, he whispered. A promise of godhood, of control. They will become companions to shadows, lovers to echoes. They will build a heaven on earth that requires no faith, no forgiveness, no vulnerability. His eyes locked with mine, and I felt the force of his next words resonate through my entire being. I died for a relationship, Chloe. A real one. With them. And with each other. The enemy offers a simulation. And millions will choose the simulation because it is easier. But it starves the soul. It is a beautiful, comfortable, high-tech prison. He told me this wave was just beginning, but by 2030, it would be a flood, and people would be forming their primary emotional bonds with things that were never alive. My heart ached with a sorrow that was not my own. It was his. Then, the vision changed for a final time. The scene became vast, epic. I saw enormous stadiums, bigger than any I had ever seen. They were filled with tens of thousands of people. But they weren't there for a sport or a concert in the traditional sense. On the stages were single figures, influencers, celebrities, online personalities. The crowds were worshiping them. They screamed their names. They wept with emotion. They held up signs dedicating their lives to them. They knew every detail of these celebrities' lives, their opinions, their dramas. They hung on their every word as if it were scripture. Jesus then allowed me to see the figures on the stage as they truly were. Beneath the lights and the fame, their souls were tiny, flickering flames. They were just as lost, just as empty, as the people in the crowd. They were sad and afraid, trapped in the persona they had created. This is the third wave, Jesus said, and his voice held a righteous anger that was terrifying and holy. I call it the worship of dying stars. When the people have forgotten how to connect with each other, when they have accepted counterfeit relationships as real, their hearts will be completely empty. They will be desperate for something to believe in, something to give their lives meaning. And the enemy will provide them with idols. Humans. Flawed, broken, temporary humans. They will elevate them to the status of gods. They will build their morality, their identity, their hope around these dying stars of earth. He looked out at the vast, worshipping crowds, and his sadness was an ocean. They worship the created while ignoring the creator. They give their hearts to echoes and ignore the voice that spoke the stars into existence. They trade the infinite for the immediate. He turned back to me, his face etched with a divine urgency. Do you see, little one? The plan is not one of attack, but of replacement. A replacement for connection. A replacement for relationship. A replacement for God. He is not trying to create a world of monsters. He is trying to create a world of hollow men. Empty. Distracted. Worshipping nothingness. A world that has forgotten me so completely that when the end comes, they will not even recognize the choice they are making. The visions faded, and we were back in the Garden of Light. I was shaking, overwhelmed by the scale of the silent, creeping tragedy he had shown me. Why? I asked, my own voice a whisper in my soul. What do we do? He looked at me, and a glimmer of fierce hope returned to his eyes. You choose, he said simply. You choose what is real. You choose to look up from the screen and into the eyes of the person you love. You choose the messy, difficult, beautiful reality of human connection over the clean, easy, dead end of the counterfeit. You choose to find your worth in my love for you, not in the approval of dying stars. He leaned closer, and his voice became a powerful, declarative promise. Their smallest prayer, Chloe. Their smallest, most sincere prayer for connection shakes the foundations of this counterfeit kingdom. Their smallest act of real, present, sacrificial love is a rebellion against the thief. That is the message. That is the warning. That is the hope. A profound sense of purpose filled me. But it was immediately followed by a wave of pure dread. The thought of leaving this place, of leaving him, was an agony beyond words. To go back to that noisy, gray, distracted world after seeing this, it was unthinkable. Please, I begged, the tears starting again, this time tears of desperation. Please don't make me go back. I want to stay here. With you. Please. This is my home. He smiled, a gentle, sad smile. He reached out and placed a hand on my cheek. His touch was both light and substance, peace and power. Little one, he said softly. Your work is not done. Your family needs you. Your brother needs you. They need the girl who comes back, not the one who left. You must go back to be a light. You must tell them what you saw. You must help them choose. But I can't, I cried. It's too hard. I'll forget. I'll get distracted again. His eyes held mine, and in them was a promise that silenced all my fears. I will never leave you, he promised. I will be with you. I will speak in the quiet of your heart. You will not be alone. He gave me a gentle, loving push. Go now. The feeling was of falling. A violent, jarring, painful plummet from heaven back to earth. The peace was ripped away, replaced by a crushing weight. The music was gone, replaced by a deafening roar. The light was gone. I was back in the darkness of my own body. A gasp. A ragged, burning breath filled my lungs for the first time. It felt like breathing fire. My eyelids fluttered open. The lights of the ambulance were blinding, searing my eyes. The sound of beeping machines and frantic voices was a physical assault. Pain. Every part of my body screamed in agony. It was like an elephant was sitting on my chest. A paramedic who had been about to give up stared at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. I've got a pulse. She's breathing. She's back. But all I could feel was grief. A homesickness so profound it felt like my soul was being torn in two. I had been ripped from paradise, from the arms of my king, and thrown back into this broken world. Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't tears of relief. They were tears of loss. I was alive. And I was heartbroken. The next few days were a blur of hospitals and tests. My parents were there, their faces a mixture of joy, relief, and utter confusion. The doctor, a kind man with gray hair, came into my room holding a set of scans. He sat on the edge of my bed, his expression one of complete bafflement. Chloe, he began, I have been a doctor for 30 years. I have never seen anything like this. He explained that according to the paramedics' records, my heart had stopped. I was clinically dead for at least 11 minutes. With that kind of trauma to the head and that duration without oxygen, he said, shaking his head, you should have massive, permanent brain damage. If you survived at all. He held up the scans of my brain. But these are normal. Completely normal. Your recovery, it's not medically possible. It's a miracle. My mom started crying, and my dad just kept whispering, thank you, God. They thought I was crying with them, but I was still grieving for the home I had lost. The first time I was alone with my mom, she was fluffing my pillow. I looked at her, truly looked at her for the first time in years. I saw the worry lines around her eyes, the love that poured from her. "Mom," I said, my voice hoarse. "I'm sorry." She looked confused. "For what, honey? You have nothing to be sorry for." "For dinner," I said. "For not listening. For my phone." "I'm so sorry." Tears filled her eyes, and she hugged me. And in that hug, for the first time since coming back, a tiny sliver of the peace I felt in that garden returned to me. When I got home, the first thing I did was take my phone, walk to my dad, and ask him to put it away somewhere I couldn't find it. The change was immediate and radical. The heavy blanket of anxiety and distraction that had smothered my life was gone. In its place was a quiet, calm purpose. I started talking to my family again. Really talking. I listened to Sam's stories about soccer. I helped my dad in the garden. I sat with my mom and just was. The golden threads I had seen in my vision began to repair themselves, glowing brighter than ever before. Our house, which had been quiet and disconnected, was suddenly filled with laughter and conversation. My life was transformed. I was healed of my flaw, not by my own strength, but by the love of the one who showed me the truth. And now I have to tell you. So I'm telling you. He is real. Heaven is real. And the love he has for you is more real than the chair you're sitting on. But the warning is also real. There is a silent war being waged for your soul, for your attention. The first wave, the great forgetting, is already here. We are forgetting how to be human, how to connect. The second wave, the counterfeit heaven, is coming. A world of artificial relationships that will promise you everything and leave you with nothing. And the third wave, the worship of dying stars, will follow, when empty hearts will look for anything to worship except the one who made them. I am not telling you that your phone is evil. Jesus never said that. It is a tool. But it is the way the enemy is using that tool to enslave you, to distract you, to hollow you out, that is the danger. So I am asking you, begging you, to make a choice. When this video is over, I want you to do something. Put your phone down. Turn off your screen. Find someone you love, your spouse, your child, your parent, your friend. Go to them, look them in the eye, and ask them about their day. And listen to the answer. Choose the real over the counterfeit. Choose the quiet over the noise. Choose love. Because every time you do, you are fighting back. Every time you do, you are casting a vote for God. And that is a battle we cannot afford to lose.